Welcome to Roll Credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. This podcast was created with help from AI tools, so double-check any quotes before you drop trivia at your next movie night. Today, we're diving into Husband. Send Help Did You Know parts of the film were shot in real remote locations to capture authentic survival conditions. And before we get into it, drop a comment and let us know what movie or show we should cover next, old or new. Okay, so look at your own resume for a second.
Oh, boy.
Right. Just think about the skills you've listed there. Like maybe you're proficient in spreadsheet software.
Sure.
Or maybe you're, great at synergizing cross-functional teams or managing quarterly deliverables.
All those great corporate buzzwords.
Exactly. And ask yourself, how many of those skills would actually keep you alive if you were suddenly dropped onto a deserted island?
Basically none. I mean, it is a really sobering thought.
It really is.
Because society relies on these highly abstract corporate constructs to determine, who has value and who has power. And Sam Raimi's 2026 thriller, Send Help, takes that fragile social hierarchy and just violently dismantles it.
Oh, completely.
It's essentially this dark fantasy for anyone who has ever felt, invisible in a modern workplace.
Yeah, and we're following this character named Linda Little, right, played by Rachel McAdams, and she is a corporate strategy manager, which basically just means she does all the grueling, behind-the-scenes, heavy lifting.
While remaining completely socially invisible.
Right. She's awkward, she has terrible posture, and her CEO boss, Bradley Preston, who is played by Dylan O'Brien, is just a walking nightmare.
Oh, he is the absolute worst.
He really is. He's this total nepotism hire.
Yeah.
Inherited the company from his dad, and he uses his power to just actively demean Linda. Like, he complains about her clothes, he fabricates HR complaints about her.
And he gives a promotion that she earned to a guy who literally erased her name off the presentation.
Yes. It's so infuriating to watch.
But that sets up the central tension beautifully. Because when director Sam Raimi first read the script by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, the obvious cinematic comparisons were those man versus nature epics.
Right, like Castaway.
Exactly, like Castaway. But Raimi deliberately took the opposite path. He wasn't really interested in a solitary man learning to conquer nature.
Okay, so what was his angle?
Well, he wanted to explore what happens to unearned privilege when the societal protections guarding it are just suddenly vaporized.
And the vaporizing event here is, of course, a massive plane crash.
Yeah.
So Linda, Bradley, and the guy who stole Linda's promotion are all on this private business flight to Bangkok. And right before the crash, they find a hidden video on Linda's laptop.
Oh, the audition tape.
Yes. It's an audition tape she made for the reality show Survivor, and they are just mercilessly mocking her for it, treating her like a total joke.
And then summer turbulence hits.
Right. The fuselage tears open, and in this completely brutal moment of panic, her coworker actually tries to strangle Linda to steal her secure seat.
So she just stabs him in the hand with a catering fork.
Yes. And that moment with the fork is the exact second the corporate hierarchy dies.
Right, because money and titles cannot stop gravity.
Exactly.
So when the plane goes down in the Gulf of Thailand, Bradley and Linda are the only survivors stranded on this remote island.
Yeah.
And immediately, instantly, that Survivor audition tape isn't a punchline anymore.
No, because Linda is a secret bushcraft enthusiast. She actually knows what she's doing. She knows how to filter water. She knows how to build weatherproof shelters.
And Bradley, on the other hand, wakes up with a shattered leg and a head wound.
Total dead weight.
Yeah, so the power dynamic just flips instantly. Nature has absolutely no respect for his stock portfolio.
None at all.
But the illusion of his power is so deeply ingrained that he still tries to give her orders. He demands she build a GPS device as if he's asking her to fix the office printer.
It's hilarious and infuriating. He just cannot comprehend a reality where he isn't the apex predator.
Right. But to truly break down a character's ego like that, and to make the audience actually feel the weight of that isolation, a director has to construct a perfectly suffocating environment.
Which they definitely did.
You can't just, film a movie like this on a green screen in Burbank and expect the actors or the audience to feel the humidity and the desperation.
Yeah, I was looking at the production notes for this deep dive, and they really didn't take the easy way out. They traveled to actual remote locations in Thailand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, specifically Phuket, Khao Phi Beach, and the famous James Bond Island in Phang Nga Bay.
Wow.
And producer Zainab Azizi talked about how the crew was just battling intense heat, humidity, and these massive insects the whole time.
That sounds miserable.
Right. And then they combine those practical jungle backdrops with controlled water tanks at Disney Studios in Sydney.
Well, the physical toll on the crew really translates directly to the screen.
Yeah.
You can literally see the authentic sweat and exhaustion.
For sure.
But visual isolation is really only half the battle here. The sound design in this film is arguably the most crucial element in trapping the audience.
Oh, the sound design is incredible.
The re-recording mixers, Marty Humphrey and Gregory Watkins, heavily utilize Dolby Atmos to manipulate the tension.
So Atmos is the format where sound isn't just assigned to a left or right speaker, right? Like they can map a specific audio object to a specific spot in a 3D space.
Precisely, yeah. So in a traditional surround sound setup, a sound effect is pushed to a designated channel. But with object-based audio like Atmos, the mixer can pinpoint a sound.
Like a buzzing mosquito.
Exactly, like a mosquito or a snapping twig. And they can make it move smoothly over your head or right behind your left shoulder.
Oh, wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and they use this technology to put the audience directly inside Linda's psychological state.
The plane crash sequence is a perfect example of this, I think, because usually in a disaster movie, the speakers are just blowing out with failing jet engines and tearing metal. It's so loud.
Right, it's overwhelming.
But Raimi instructed the sound team to completely cut the roaring engine sounds right at the moment of peak crisis.
Yeah, it's such a shocking choice.
He strips away all the deafening noise and narrows the audio entirely to Linda's intimate perspective. So you just hear her panicked breathing and, like, the clinking of silverware flying past her head.
Because it forces a subjective experience. By silencing the objective reality of the roaring plane, the audience is suspended in Linda's state of shock.
I read the mixers initially fought Raimi on this.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Yeah, they thought it would feel like an audio glitch, but it actually creates this incredibly visceral terror.
It really does.
I do have to push back on another audio choice they made later on the island, though.
Oh, which one?
Okay, so there's the scene where Linda ferments fruit into a homemade toilet wine.
Oh, yeah, the campfire scene.
Right, and she and Bradley have this really vulnerable conversation around the fire, but the mixers completely scrubbed the sound of the ocean waves and the crickets.
Yep, they did.
I just don't get it. I mean, if a production pays millions to shoot on a lush tropical beach, why artificially scrub the natural ambient sound? Wouldn't absolute silence during an outdoor scene take the viewer completely out of the movie?
Well, I mean, it does feel counterintuitive, right? You expect to hear the crashing waves 30 feet away.
Yeah.
But removing that ambient noise creates an acoustic vacuum.
An acoustic vacuum.
Yeah. Human brains naturally use background noise like ocean waves or wind to feel grounded in a physical space.
Okay.
So when you strip that away, the listener's brain has nothing to focus on except the make-a dialogue and the shifting power dynamic between the two actors.
Oh, I see.
You can't hide behind the white noise of the environment. The silence becomes heavy, almost suffocating. It traps the audience in the psychological tension of the conversation rather than the physical reality of the beach.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And speaking of physical reality, the environment was harsh, both visually and acoustically. To match that intensity, the actors had to prepare physically.
Oh, absolutely.
Rachel McAdams trained extensively with Kai Furneaux, who is this Australian survival expert and stunt woman, and they didn't just study survival theory, they were physically practicing it.
Right.
Furneaux actually had McAdams banging rocks together to make flint blades inside a hotel room in Sydney.
Which is amazing. And Furneaux's goal there was absolute physical authenticity. Because if Linda is going to survive, the audience needs to believe she actually knows the mechanics of survival.
Yeah, and one of the techniques she learned was using a bamboo fire saw. I actually had to look this up because it sounds impossible.
Still looks exhausting.
It is. You don't just rub two sticks together. You have to split a piece of bamboo, carve a notch into it, and then rigorously saw the sharp edge of another piece of bamboo across that notch.
And that creates the friction.
Yes, the friction creates this incredibly hot, burning wood dust that eventually catches an ember. It requires massive physical endurance. And McAdams learned how to do it for real, building up intense calluses on her hands.
See, her commitment to the tactile reality of survival really anchors the film. But then you look at Dylan O'Brien's approach to playing Bradley.
Yeah.
And it is just a fascinating contrast in preparation.
Because Dylan actively avoided any survival training.
Completely.
While Rachel was over in the corner learning to weave mats and invent fire from scratch, he preferred to stay completely in character as the useless CEO.
He would literally just watch her and refuse to learn anything practical.
What he did obsess over, however, was his character's injured leg. He developed this hyperfixation on the continuity of his limp.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Which is funny to us, but apparently it drove the crew a bit crazy. He was constantly stopping to ask the production team, like, what phase of my limp are we in today?
Well, and to understand why that frustrated the crew, you have to look at how movies are actually scheduled. Films are almost never shot chronologically.
Right.
This is called out-of-sequence shooting. So a production might shoot a scene from day 45 on the island on Monday, and then shoot a scene from day 2 on the island on a Tuesday.
Because they schedule around location availability and lighting, not the actual narrative timeline.
Exactly. So Dylan O'Brien is trying to mathematically calculate exactly how much his leg should be healed on any given day of the shoot.
Which is a nightmare for the cinematographer, Bill Pope.
Total nightmare.
They had to constantly rethink camera setups because O'Brien would refuse to put weight on his injured side, or he'd refuse to lie down in a certain direction depending on what phase of the limp he had calculated.
Pope actually had to pull him aside at one point and remind him that the movie was not a documentary about a leg injury.
That is amazing. But, you know, the behind-the-scenes dynamic mirrors their on-screen reality perfectly.
Oh, 100%.
Rachel is doing the hard physical labor, transforming from a meek office worker into a capable force of nature. And Dylan is trapped in his own head, completely unhelpful with the practical tasks, and entirely focused on his own perceived suffering.
And it pays off on screen. We watch Linda evolve so much. Like, she tracks and kills a wild boar with a sharpened stick. She engineers advanced rain catchers.
Meanwhile, Bradley is reduced to eating insects just to stay alive.
Yeah, eventually having to crawl to her to beg for food and forgiveness.
I have to admit, though, watching the film, I got total whiplash.
Really? How so?
Well, we go from this meticulously grounded, gritty survival story with bamboo fire saws straight into, like, cartoonish CGI boars and buckets of flying blood. Did Sam Raimi just lose the plot halfway through, or is that tonal collision intentional?
Oh, that collision is the defining hallmark of Sam Raimi's career.
Okay, so it was on purpose.
Definitely. He's a pioneer of a subgenre often called splatstick.
Splatstick?
Yeah, it's a portmanteau of splatter horror and slapstick comedy. He blends visceral, over-the-top gore with dark humor.
Oh, I see.
So the meticulous survival details in the first half of Send Help aren't there to make a realistic documentary. They serve as an anchor. By establishing a rigid, grounded reality first, the eventual descent into absolute madness hits the audience with much more force.
And the madness definitely arrives.
It really does.
During that wild boar hunt, the sound design team used the Atmos ceiling speakers to literally shower the audience in the sounds of boar snot and blood.
Disgusting, but brilliant.
Right. They mapped the audio objects to make it feel like viscera was spraying right past the viewer's head.
It's a very deliberate choice to violate the boundary between the screen and the audience. Though some critics were a little less impressed with the visual execution there.
Yeah, I read that.
They pointed out that the CGI for the boar looked a bit rubbery, and they noted a pretty glaring continuity error.
Oh, where Lindy is drenched in blood only for her clothes to magically appear clean in the very next sequence.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, you can forgive a few CGI hiccups because Raimi heavily favors practical effects when it comes to the actual gore.
That's true.
Rachel McAdams mentioned in an interview that Raimi enthusiastically operated the fake blood himself on set.
I love that.
She said he apparently has a very athletic stance and can perfectly check a bucket of fake blood right into an actor's face.
He really understands the tactile impact of practical effects. And, you know, the film leverages those practical effects to push the power dynamic into incredibly dark territory.
Oh, definitely.
Like, there is a pivotal scene where Bradley attempts to poison Linda with toxic berries so he can steal a raft and escape alone.
But Linda survives, drags him back to shore, and uses a toxic octopus to temporarily paralyze him.
Which leads to easily the most tense scene in the movie.
She drags a paralyzed Bradley to the campfire, heats up a knife until it's glowing red, and brings it terrifyingly close to his anatomy.
She really makes him believe it, too.
Yeah, she pretends she is going to castrate him, holding the tension for an agonizing amount of time before stabbing a rat instead as a final warning.
The psychology of that scene is brilliant, and it works entirely because of Dylan O'Brien's performance.
Right, because his character is medically paralyzed by the octopus toxin.
Exactly. O'Brien has to convey sheer panic terror completely silently. He's acting using only the frantic movement of his eyeballs.
And behind the scenes, out of frame, the crew is standing by with mechanical blood bladders just waiting to blast the actors.
Right, and mechanical blood bladders are a total staple of practical horror.
How do they work exactly?
Well, they are essentially small pouches of fake blood taped under an actor's clothing, and they're connected to a concealed tube. A special effects technician off-camera uses a burst of compressed air to detonate the bladder on cue.
Simulating a brutal injury in real time.
Exactly. And it requires immense coordination between the actor and the effects team to pull off a gag like that without breaking the tension of the scene.
Which they definitely pulled off. And amidst all this tension and gore, Raimi also packed the film with his signature Easter eggs.
Of course he did. You really cannot have a Sam Raimi movie without a cameo from his longtime collaborator Bruce Campbell.
Or an appearance of his famous 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88.
Right, the classic. Though since the characters are isolated on a deserted island, incorporating an Oldsmobile naturally required some clever placement.
Yeah, they had to sneak it into the opening act. When Linda is in the corporate parking garage having a breakdown in her car after losing her promotion, the classic is parked right behind her in the background.
It's a blink and you miss it moment.
Totally. And Bruce Campbell doesn't actually show up in person, but his face is used for the portrait of Bradley's deceased father.
The former CEO who founded the company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which implies Bruce Campbell is technically the architect of the toxic corporate empire that ruined Linda's life.
It is such a brilliant nod to Raimi's filmography.
It really is.
The other crucial Raimi signature is the musical score, composed by Danny Elfman. Elfman's work here does a phenomenal job of tracking Linda's internal evolution.
Like through a musical motif.
Yeah, a motif is a short recurring sequence of notes associated with a specific character. And Elfman built Linda's motif using a solitary female voice.
Initially, that voice sounds very innocent and fragile. Elfman actually drew inspiration from the haunting lullaby in Rosemary's Baby.
But as Linda realizes she holds the power on the island, the motif evolves.
Oh, big time.
By the time she makes the choice to let a rescue party walk blindly off a cliff just to maintain her control, Elfman twists that innocent vocal track into something dissonant, heavy, and deeply sinister.
Because she doesn't just adapt to nature anymore, she weaponizes it. She discovers a hidden, abandoned luxury mansion on the other side of the island.
And keeps it a complete secret from Bradley.
Right. And ultimately kills him with a golf club when he attempts to betray her one last time.
It's so dark.
She leaves the island alone, using her fabricated survival diary to reinvent herself as a wealthy, famous author.
She essentially outcorporates the corporate guy. She uses the wild to build her own empire.
Which is just a crazy ending.
It is, but it forces us to confront a deeply unsettling question about modern identity, When the corporate armor, the job titles, the tailored suits, and the bank accounts are completely stripped away, who are we underneath? If you were dropped on a deserted island today, would your actual practical skills make you the leader of the pack? Or would you just be the liability?
And that wraps our deep dive into Send Help. If you enjoyed exploring this intense survival story, follow Roll Credits and share it with your fellow thriller fans. And don't forget to drop a comment with what movie or show we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and maybe a few more edge-of-your-seat moments.